Another Miami Dolphins training camp practice is in the books, and we're here to break it all down on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting the way we want them to. But FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We have practice notes. But first, a disclaimer at the top of today's show. I thought yesterday was a highly competitive, ebbs and flows, healthy battle. And in a lot of ways, today's practice was sloppy. I think it's the first thing, if you ask me to describe today's practice in one word, and that's okay because it's July 29th. It's the first day in pads. There's seemed to be more of a focus on team periods as compared to individuals with there's a longer install and walkthrough at the beginning of practice that then turned into more team periods. And I think this is one of those days where, as somebody who's observing practice, you're excited to know what the team's response is going to be to it. Because there were breaking the huddle and missing personnel. There was muffed snaps. There were bobbled catches. There were misplays on the ball in the air. There was a nice interception from Jalen Ramsey on a ball that was tipped by one of the practice performance standouts that we're going to give some flowers to. But all in all, you sat here and you watched practice and you just kind of waited for the switch to flip and everybody to kind of click in. And it didn't really happen. You know, there was the highlight of practice was a long touchdown pass up the sideline on a go route to Tyreek Hill from Skylar Thompson. And then they came back the very next play, and Braxton Berrios ran the same route. And if Tyreek Hill would have been running it, it would have been caught. But Tyreek Hill wasn't running it. Braxton Berrios was running it, and therefore they misconnected on that play. So that was the highlight of practice, was that individual play. But just the basic mechanics of the basic functions of football was sloppy today. And again, I'm not going to read too far into it, but I do think this is one of those things where you're probably at the point where Tua and Aaron Brewer need to get together and spend a little extra time working on the snaps to get it figured out, whether it was shotgun, whether it was under center. There's been issues with all the quarterbacks. And Mike McDaniel was asked about it yesterday. He was asked yesterday, before yesterday's practice, about bad snaps or fundamental functions of running a play that at what point do they start to be a concern? And Mike was pretty clear, and he's right, that there's not defined ones and twos and threes. Yeah, you'll have who you would perceive to be starting offensive linemen with not who you would perceive to be the starting quarterback with not who you would perceive to be the starting wide receivers. And that's like that on both sides of the ball. There's a lot of different combinations right now as they're just kind of working install and reps. Mike McDaniel was very enlightening last time he spoke on Sunday about the kind of the thought process behind why they would structure Tyreek Hill to run routes with the UDFA quarterback, as an example. So there's a lot of that irregularity that's going on right now, and you're sympathetic to that, but at the same time, like, you got to be able to run the play and have a practice. And it was something that was very clunky today. So you take it in stride. At one point, Tua and Brewer did step off to the side and kind of have a communication. But that's something that Brewer, I know, was kind of doing some separate training in mini camp and OTAs, and then Tua was a limited participant and did not participate in team drills in OTAs. And then you get to training camp and until the contract was done. So there's that element of this. The dust has to settle. The guys have to put in the extra reps to get it sorted out. They have plenty of time to do that. Brewer was a center last year and did not have extreme examples or issues of snap placement and snap issues. So it's just unfortunately you got to grit your teeth and push through it. And what Mike McDaniel said when he talked and was asked about that was, you understand that it's going to be a thing. It used to drive me crazy, but now you just understand it. It's part of getting everybody's feet wet again. And it only becomes a problem if you continue for an extended period of time to see the same issues with the same people and it doesn't get better. So, and the issues were worse today than they were yesterday. And I think some of that was some of the formations, whether you're in shotgun or under center and having to get your hands on a clean exchange of the football if you're under center. So not very fun from that perspective for this practice. And some near misses on some throws. I thought there were some really nice plays, some really nice flashes. I have my full team notes here. A lot of team periods in today's practice, which is great for evaluation, but you kind of have to choose. What are you looking at? What are you going to choose to do? And fortunately for me, in doing so, you take the sloppiness of practice in stride, and you do get a number of standout performers that are kind of the silver lining to what was an underwhelming performance and not to the standard of the team. So we're going to talk about those standout performers next, who stood out in a good way. Now that we've gotten the disclaimer out of the way that if anybody tells you that today was a good practice for the Dolphins, they're lying to you. It's how the team responds to it and looking at the individual performances in the midst of that that perk your eyebrows up. And there's a few of them. So we're going to get into that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Listen, we all love sports. It's hard when the sports stop sporting the way that you want them to. And without the NHL and NBA, the playoffs that wind down around the same time and no football games just yet, it can be a little hard in the dead of summer. But FanDuel keeps the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open up the app and dream up some bets. Anytime you're in the mood, and this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. I don't know that this character is going to get the orange practice jersey. Zach Sealer wore it today. Very well deserving. I know I mentioned yesterday, and the notes were brief. It said Zach Sealer looks the part. What I meant by Zach Sealer looks the part is this is your star standout player on the interior defensive line. And he looked like that. And he looked like that again today. There were a couple of plays where his range while wearing the orange jersey today kind of reminded you of the Christian Wilkins reps where it's like, dude, how did you get all the way over here already? So outside runs, quick throws to the perimeter, Zach Sealer's popping up around the football. So you love seeing that a continuation of what made last year's interior defensive front so impactful for the Dolphins with Sealer as the holdover here to know that strain continues. I don't know that this player is going to get the orange jersey, but I thought that one of the players who popped the most was Zeke Vandenberg. And here's what's important to remember about or to know about Zeke Vandenberg. He's playing stack backer. He came into the pros last year as a small school UDFA edge player that was undersized and lacked length. He's playing off the ball, and he's making plays. He was the one who tipped the ball from Mike White that was ultimately intercepted by Jalen Ramsey on a very acrobatic interception that it was full extension from Vandenberg as the underneath hook player in zone coverage, and did a really nice job getting in the throwing window. There was another opportunity where he, from depth, came on a pressure from depth as a stack off ball player and got into an interior gap and would have had a sack with a clean run through one of the gaps. That it was a nice job by Vandenberg disguising his intent to come on the play. You get things like that, and you get really excited about, okay, this is a fun player. Now, the pathway to the 53 for Zeke Vandenberg is kind of tough, especially playing off-ball linebacker, right? Because that's the room where Anthony Walker had a vet rest today. Jordan Brooks, David Long was back. Duke Riley, you got Cam Brown, you have a draft pick in Channing Tindall that we're still kind of waiting to see flash and splash. But his draft status is at least somewhat notable if the team were to hold on to him and try to make it work. There's a lot of bodies, and typically teams don't carry 6 off-ball linebackers. So for Zeke Vandenberg, he's got a big uphill climb, but he's done a nice job. And David Long spoke after practice and was pretty complimentary of Zeke Vandenberg as a player who was flashing, making plays as a rookie, and then had the redshirt the year because he got hurt, and then all throughout the spring as a kind of an unheralded player and playing a new position and kind of getting a redshirt year to do it. It looked impressive. Good movement skills. You'd expect that for an undersized pass rusher. Certainly moves the part. River Craycraft continues to be a fairly reliable piece of the puzzle in the wide receiver room. He just gets the offense, right? He's had so much time in the offense. And I mentioned this when I went on Joe Rose this morning. The question for River is at what point his savvy and football IQ and experience in the scheme gets passed by somebody else because of their physical talent. Now, nobody questions the floor of River Craycraft. The question is the ceiling with River Craycraft. He blocks. He does dirty work. He knows the offense like the back of his hand. He runs good routes. He's fairly reliable with his hands. He just doesn't have the athletic profile of somebody who's going to be a mismatch in one-on-one coverage. But I think you would be lying to sit down and stack the wide receivers. And this does not include Odell Beckham because he's been working his way back from whatever it is that he's working his way back from, that he's working off on the side on as a member of the active PUP list. If you sat down and stacked the receivers thus far in how they have performed in training camp, I would go Waddle, Hill, Craycraft at 3 to the first week. That's not to say he's the third most talented. That's not to say he's going to be the third wide receiver, but just the reliability and the consistency. And the wide receiver room is crowded because Odell Beckham's going to be on the roster. Tyreek Hill's going to be on the roster. Jalen Waddle's going to be on the roster. Presumably Malik Washington's going to be on the roster. River Craycraft is getting paid more than, or Braxton Berrios is getting paid more than River Craycraft. Eric Ezukama. How do you stack it out? It's a very messy room, and River's going to continue to make it very hard for anybody to overlook him or gloss him over as being a potential answer as one of the depth players in the room. Jordan Brooks, a couple of really nice run fits. Jack Driscoll's positional versatility stands out a big way. Being cross-trained at multiple spots, which is interesting. That's kind of the same thing with Liam Eichenberg. One of those guys is potentially going to be a starter at right guard, unless it's Robert Jones, unless Isaiah Wynn's not ready for the start of the season, which it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. It sounds like he's just kind of progressively working his way back. The team knows that he's somebody that they need to be careful with, and they're not in a rush right now, which is fine. But it's notable to see Driscoll and to see him line up at a couple different spots. I did think the offensive line had some bright moments with pads on. Patrick Paul talked about that after practice and mentioned having a surface area that you can actually keep your hands fitted on now that the pads are on. Paul had a really nice pass rush rep against Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson tried to press upfield and then convert speed to power. And Paul was comfortable in his set and then got hands on and sat down and compressed that pass rush from Chop Robinson and didn't allow him to push him back into the quarterback. You did see, as far as defensive linemen against the offensive line, though, I thought this was Muhammad Kamara's best practice. I thought he's very disruptive. I thought he had one sack in a team setting in which he dipped the inside shoulder, turned the corner, and would have had a sack. And then there was another play where he converted speed to power on the inside shoulder. He took his first 3 steps upfield. Patrick Paul kind of opens his hips a little bit to greet him. And then Kamara sticks his foot in the ground and comes back across his face and converts speed to power and pushes through his inside shoulder for what would have been a pressure. Pretty disruptive. Quentin Bell, again. Quentin Bell's been maybe the defensive, unheralded hero of camp so far. It's almost like he heard all offseason about the issues with the Dolphins edge group and was the one who rose to the occasion in his preparations. Let's see. We had Nick Needham had a really nice fit from depth on playing some safety to step up and fit against the run. You saw Devon Achane had a really nice run that got some help from the tight end. One of the tight ends, and Alec Ingold, had a really nice seal blocks on it. Was a same side toss. So if I'm the back and the quarterback's to my left side, I just immediately widen, and the quarterback has to pitch to the same side as I lined up to toss and catch the ball. Braxton Berrios did have a nice tough catch on a deep cross over the middle. But all in all, I think the defense had its way throughout this practice, but a lot of that was because of the timing issues with Miami's self-inflicted wounds on the offensive side of the ball. As I consider where I'm looking for here, I want to know what execution looks like tomorrow. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and why a practice like today may be inevitable, but it's what you do on the other side of it that's going to be very enlightening. That's next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Going to the game is not supposed to be stressful, and that's why you should get your tickets through Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier, with prices on Gametime actually going down closer to first pitch. Why would you shop anywhere else? They take all the guesswork out of buying tickets. They give you a panoramic view from the seats, so you know exactly what sightline you're going to have. There's all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees when you go to check out. And they have the Gametime guarantee, which means they will credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets in the same row and section for less somewhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets. The lowest prices guaranteed. Notable guys that were down today did include Anthony Walker, who we mentioned. Cam Smith did not practice with whatever the issue was that excused him midway through practice on Sunday. So to be determined there what the turnaround time is. Kendall Fuller had a maintenance day as well. Teron Armstead kind of going through his own individual conditioning program as well, as a player who you treat everybody fairly, but not everybody the same, right? When you're a multi-time Pro Bowl tackle with injury durability questions, and you know exactly what you've signed yourself up for, you want to treat him fairly, but treating him equally to everybody else probably is not going to put you or him in the best position for him to be playing his best football come week 1 when you play the Jaguars. So that meant more reps for Patrick Paul and Kendall Lamb. Keon Smith moved around a little bit. I actually thought he had a really nice combo block with Jack Driscoll to create some movement on Benito Jones. And that's the last observation that I have from practice as far as personnel. I genuinely believe that this gaggle and collection of interior defensive linemen that the Dolphins have collected, they could be fine with. I think they could genuinely be fine. They're not going to make as many splash or sexy plays as Christian Wilkins is. Zach Searle is obviously capable of doing that. Calais Campbell is obviously capable of rushing the passer when he plays inside. But between Benito Jones and Neville Gallimore and Tierre Tart and Jonathan Harris, I've continued to be impressed by that group, not just in the individual sessions against an interior offensive line that, there's still some lingering questions with, but also the indie periods and looking at them work the bags and work their run fits and work lock peak shed and being able to get rid of blockers and disengage at the point of attack. Their body types are dense, and just seeing how they're choosing to infuse a couple different fronts that kind of give you the structural stability to know that, hey, we're going to be pretty stout up front, and to know that they have the fluidity behind it, that they can still effectively space the field. That's kind of one of the field spacing things that's interesting. Is I know Sean McVay did a podcast recently and talked about how against today's NFL defenses, you need all 5 eligibles out in the routes to help space the field. And while that's not necessarily a 1-for-1 with what I'm thinking about when I invoke that, or when I reference that, I do think about the versatility and the athleticism of your back 7 players gives you the ability to effectively space the field from a defensive perspective with one less guy, is that's hard to do. And if you're going to line up with 3-4 front or 5 guys on the line of scrimmage, well, how do you space the field in that regard? How do you space and get everybody to their landmarks and not have big gouging areas of the field that you have to be worried about the opposing team attacking? I think they have enough range and athleticism and versatility with the guys that are playing behind their front. Just seeing it and knowing what the resume is of some of these guys, that I do think they can be pretty fluid on a week-by-week basis if they feel like they're going to be outgunned or not. If they feel like, hey, we're going to be outgunned in the point of attack, we might need an extra hat in the box. Like, I think they can break out some of those fronts and a lot of times be okay. So that's promising for me, as I know that some of the questions on the defensive side of the ball lie with the defensive interior, never mind the health of the edge guys. But just seeing it early for the first week of camp, I do have a better level of confidence that collection of interior defensive line talent can get the job done, even if they're not going to have the splash plays. And that's okay. Because as long as you're getting teams in 3rd and 6+, that's when the dogs can go out and hunt, and you can rush the passer at a high level, which I think they're going to have the horses, especially when guys get healthy. But I think between what you do have in the edge room, what's going to be a little bit more of a pressure-oriented scheme, you've seen some really nice simulated pressures where they've been able to get free runners. It's been part of the recipe of Emmanuel Ogbah, kind of looking back the part, is if an offensive lineman has to squeeze and compress down because they think that or the interior gaps are occupied, and we have to honor that and step down so we don't get free runners through interior gaps. What does that mean? That means Emmanuel Ogbah or whoever's on the edge might be left unblocked, and you have to play hot off of him. So that's where the first week of observations for me defensively, I'm coming away feeling good. But the biggest question I have is, how is this team going to respond? And there was an incident like this last year. I remember it was the practice that Christian Wilkins completely wrecked. It was before the public practices, but it was a poor showing from the offensive side of the ball. Christian Wilkins ruined everything in sight, and this was before he had his hold in. And Mike let the team know at the end of practice that what they did was not good enough. And I couldn't hear what Mike McDaniel told the team today, and I'm being very selectively nice when I describe how Mike let everybody know what was up. And then they came back the next practice, and they had a much better practice. So my expectations tomorrow for Tuesday are high, because I saw this last year. I saw this, the embodiment of this practice. I remember seeing the parallel universe version of it last year. And I know how Mike talked to the team afterwards, because I heard it when we were walking back out, because it rained. So we were inside. So we had to walk through the facility to go back up to the media area. So if you're able to get down to Baptist Health Training Complex tomorrow, I expect a good practice from the team tomorrow. I expect much better intensity. I expect much better precision. I expect them to resolve some of the issues that they had as far as just the sloppiness, the attention to detail, the basic functions of getting a snap exchange done, breaking the huddle with 11 guys. Because one time we broke the huddle, we're missing somebody and it had to come back and reset. Should be a good one tomorrow. And if it's not, then you'll know, because we're going to have another practice recap coming your way tomorrow after the Tuesday practice, as we continue our way through this first week of foundation at training camp. I'm Kyle Krabs. You can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Go Dolphins. Talk to y'all soon.